Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Man, I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. So, as you guys are probably aware who follows chess, it is the Superbet Rapid and Blitz, and we are in Poland. Well, I'm not in Poland. I'm just saying we as a chess tournament is in Poland, homie. Yeah, so I went ahead and grabbed the round 2 game between the very own Magnus Carlsen versus Wesley. So, always an epic matchup between these two hard-fought battles going on. Of course, as always, my people in the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na? And I'll say Masaya Komi Kitty Kang Muli. It's very nice to see you guys again. I appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat. Anybody who is coming from Norway, I will say God Morgan and Tusen Tak. It's like I think it's super early in the morning in Norway. It's probably like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, so I don't think anybody's really up. But when you see the video, God Morgan to you. Anyways, if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we got for this game, homie. So we got the move D4. We got D5. Just queen's pawn opening, starting it off with knight to F3, knight to F6, and we got bishop to F4. As you guys probably know, it's the London. That's how we're rolling. It's just a pretty, kind of simple system to play. You're just developing your pieces pretty much. So, I mean, you can't really ever go wrong with that, right? So we got the move C5, attacking in the center. You guys already know that C5 is going to come at some point if you're black. You got to do it, bro. So we got the move E3. We got knight to C6. We got bishop to E2. Let me adjust my computer just a touch. There we go. Okay. It's a little easier to see. Thank you. All right. And then it's crazy because at move 5, we have the novelty of the game, which is knight to H5. And this novelty actually really kind of puzzles me simply because whenever you develop a bishop to like F4 or F5, you're almost always going to see like a knight on the rim attacking that bishop because number one, you can create some type of damage on the structure. And then, you're trading a knight for a bishop. So, I mean, that's usually beneficial. We got bishop up to E5 and then the crazy F6. And ignoring the fact that he has his bishop on in the center of the board, Magnus Carlsen decides to go the move C4. And it actually makes it very tricky. Some of you guys probably are out there wondering, like, wait a minute, like bishop to E5 and then I go C4. Like, what about my bishop, right? Can he just take the bishop? You actually can. So if we go through and take a look and see what that looks like instead let's say C4 and then the pawn takes right here, right? So pawn takes E5. You can definitely go into this position. It actually ends up being slightly better for black. It's a tricky thing to play. I think this will probably be a little bit better as far as if you're going to play this in like a bullet game or something like that. With Wesley So being able to think for a long time, it's not probably, the best, but it's definitely not losing by any means. But we probably see pawn takes D5, and this is like the variation that they kind of went over, when they were doing the commentation. Queen takes D5, knight to C3, queen D8, D5. You're knocking the pieces back, and knight goes back to B8. Knight takes E5, so you got a little bit of compensation for your piece. And you are attacking this knight, so you're going to move it back to F6 and then G4. And I mean, it is a pretty monster attack, but it's nothing that black can't just kind of like, take care of. They are a little bit open here on the light squares, but I mean, they do have the light square bishop to help with the defense. So, I mean, they're doing good. But like I said, after we see the move C4, Wesley So said, hey, I don't want any of that because probably he was going to have to spend a lot of time thinking, and this is only a 25-minute game with 10-second increment, so he didn't really feel like having to go through all of that. So he just plays the move E6, which is the move that I accidentally put right before I went into that tangent. But we got pawn taking D5, pawn taking D5, and then it is now that we decide to go back with this bishop. We got bishop to G3, knight takes G3. So basically, black has gotten what they want. They really wanted to get rid of this bishop. The bishop, when it does get developed on F4, F5, it is a fairly strong piece. Sometimes you do want to try to trade a knight for that. But we got pawn taking G3. We got the move C4. And this move can be a little irritating just simply because, I mean, you're putting like a nice wedge in white's position. So white is really going to want to try to get rid of that. So we do see the move A3, preventing anything from landing on B4. We got bishop to E6. We got knight to C3. Queen goes to D7, and then we do have the move B3. Like I said, you are going to try to break this structure down some kind of way. Pawn takes B3. Wesley So just says, forget it. I'll go ahead and just trade off here. Queen takes B3, and we got rook over to C8. Queen goes down to B2. We are thinking about if we leave the queen here, We are thinking about knight to a5, which gets a tempo on the queen, and then it allows the knight to plop down in c4. So if we back the queen up like Magnus Carlsen did, we're not looking at any of that because you have the ability after knight to a5 to go bishop to b5, and you are, you know, putting a nice little pin on this queen. The knight has to go back, and you really didn't do anything. So we do see bishop to e7. We got bishop up to d3. King goes to f7. And I mean, you're really kind of asking yourself if you're white, like, so what do you plan on doing with your king? You know, it doesn't seem like it's the safest to put it over here, just simply because you have this open, half-open file that maybe black can kind of play on. But you really don't want to go to this queen side because it's completely open c-file. So it kind of seems like white is never going to find a home for their king. The queen goes down to b1. It's funny how the queen keeps making these little micro moves, like these one square moves they're making. We got the move g6, but I mean, it did have some logic behind it. After queen to b1, we are threatening this pawn because then after this pawn takes here, you cannot play g3 and trap the bishop because you will be taking here with check. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a different situation. So we do see g6. We got knight down to e2. King goes to g7. Knight up to f4. You know, right now, black has double bishops. So, you know, white's, you know, having the same idea that they want to try to get rid of one of these bishops. But we preserve it. Bishop to f7. We got castles up by white, which, I mean, it was definitely one of the moves. Like, I mean, so you're not in really any danger. You do have your knights doing a pretty good job of protecting your king over there. So we got knight to a5. So we do have that idea of trying to go to c4. It doesn't have quite the same oomph to it right now as it did back in the day. Well, not back in the day, but earlier in the game. We got pawn taking e4, bishop taking e4. Bishop going to d6, we see the move d5. I mean, this is a completely passed pawn. So, I mean, you know, why not push it, right? So we do see bishop taking f4, pawn taking f4, and then knight to c4. And it might seem like this move really does nothing, but you really kind of have to go rook to d1, which is what Magnus Carlsen does in the game, just simply because we do not want to allow this knight to plop down here. And put a little fork on our, you know, bishop and our queen at some point. So we're just making sure that we're good. Also, I mean, you know, you have this pawn hit twice with the queen and the bishop. So, I mean, this is definitely just like, you know, just a reinforcing move all around. So the knight does come back to d6. We got knight up to e5. And that's a really interesting move. You see the bar went, you know, it's a little bit in black's favor. But, I mean, this is a very, very tricky move. You see the bar didn't really move too much. So if you want to stop the video right here, this is a really like perfect time to guess a move. There is a really, really strong move. It's not the only move. I mean, there's other moves in the position, but this is definitely one of the best moves in the position. And it maintains black's advantage. If you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to guess that move, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So, you know, a couple, like something that you really need to pay attention to in the position is, of course, I mean, the queen is holding this bishop. The knight is attacking it and stuff. You know, you do have the option to take here with the knight, but you are giving, not only are you correcting white's pawn structure, but you're giving it two completely passed pawns in the center of the board, which is not 100% ideal. But one of the things you should notice about the position if you're black is that this pawn is actually undefended. You know, kind of x-raying through this bishop. So the move that I'm actually looking for is queen down to a4. And this is, like I said, x-raying through the bishop. And it's putting a lot of pressure. Not only is the knight still on pre, but it is putting a lot of pressure on this bishop. And then a rook can always come over. So we might see something like this. Rook to e1, rook h to e8. Knight takes f7. I mean, something kind of has to give now because that, like I said, that knight is attacked. So king taking f7, bishop down to d3, rook taking d1, queen taking d1, and then we have managed to grab that pawn if we're black. So this is definitely one of the, you know, this is by far the best move that you can go into. In the position, after knight to e5, we actually saw Wesley So go queen to e7. You know, this is Magnus Carlsen he's playing. So even when players are like on the opposite end of Wesley So and he's like kind of sacking a piece, you're thinking like, man, did I overlook a tactic somewhere? So, I mean, you do get that nervousness going on. So, I mean, you want to play a little bit, you know, a little bit more safe. And for those of you that are wondering, I will go into this real quick. You know, like I said, you can actually take here. You did have some nice moves that you can make. If you do capture here, pawn would be capturing back, of course. Knight would capture, queen would capture. And then you did have the ability to go rook h to e8. You know, just pinning this pawn down. And I mean, you're still in a, you know, a nice position. You're not going to fork these two pieces right here. But going back, like I said, we did see the move queen to e7. So then, you know, the knight takes on f7, the king takes f7. We got bishop down to f3, trying to preserve it. So you can see that this position, even though it's still good for black, I mean, it's pretty sound for both players. You know, it's not quite, doesn't quite have the oomph that that other queen to a4 had in it. We got rook h to e8. We see queen up to b4. We got rook down to c4. So your stay on b4, if you're the queen, is very, very short. We got the queen down to d2. We got queen over to a7. So we just have a lot of maneuvering kind of going on right now at this point in the game. We got the move a4. We got queen to c5. We got rook a to c1. Rook to e7. Rook takes c4, queen takes c4. I mean, black definitely had some pressure in their position, so one way to relieve that pressure is going to be to trade pieces, so that's what we see. We got the move a5, rook goes over to c7, and we have a really nice sneaky move, and this is f5. And you definitely have the ability to go wrong in this position if you are black. So you have to play some specific moves. One of the moves, which is what we see in the game, is actually king to g7. That's what Wesley so decides. But I will show you these two different variations. If you just think you can grab this pawn over here with this knight, you'd be sadly mistaken after the move d6. And if you try to go rook to d7, bishop to d5 would crush all your hopes and dreams. As you can see, this is a nice little fork. We don't want to go into that. But after f5, we did see just pawn taking, like, hey, bro, you just gave me a free pawn. You would see queen to h6. And the problem is, I mean, this is definitely much better than the knight taking. But, I mean, you see this king is really, really open. And you have a lot of these weaknesses on the light squares. You got the bishop possibly coming in, the rook swinging over. So that's not really where you want to be if you're black. So that's why we see Wesley So go king to g7. We see pawn taking g6, pawn taking g6. We got queen to e3. Queen goes to c5, offering a trade. Is pretty dead even, so it really doesn't too much matter if you trade or not. I mean, it's pretty much going to be the same thing. Queen goes to e6, you know, just keeping the chance of winning on. If you ever want to try to win a game, you probably want to try to keep queens on, because then your tactics go way up. And, you know, the things that your opponent can try to do are going to be a little bit lower. We got rook to f7. We got the move g3. We got queen up to c7. King goes to g2. We see rook over to e7. Queen goes down to h3. We got queen up to c8. You see that black is still trying to trade, like I said, which is, I mean, it's going to be a fairly even game if you do go into a trade. So, you know, we do go into a trade here, though. Queen takes c8. Knight takes c8. And even though it seems like it might get kind of dicey after the move d6, it's like, wait a minute, like this pawn is kind of trying to score a touchdown, isn't it? Well, I mean, it's not really going to successfully make it there. But you do have to make sure that you don't mess up in this situation. After we see rook go over to d7, we see bishop going to b7. And you definitely, under zero circumstances, want to go rook takes b7 because d7, you cry a river all the way home. So we go back. And we see the move knight takes d6, which does put this rook in a pin, but it's not any issues. I mean, the king is going to be able to slide over and you'll be all good. So we got king up to f8. We got bishop down to c6, but we do see rook to c7. And you cannot take the knight because king to e7 is going to be pushing your rook away, so you're going to be able to win the bishop. So it's not like, you know, black just hung a piece. We got bishop back to a4. King goes to e7. Rook to e1 with check. King goes to f7. We got bishop down to b3 with check. We got king up to f8. Rook comes up to e6, which might seem like, hey, man, I'm forking these pieces, right? But black does have the saving move, rook knight to e8. We got rook down to e3. Knight goes back to d6. Bishop down to d1. King goes to f7. We got bishop to f3. Bishop goes to c5. We don't want the bishop improving itself at all, right? So we got the rook to b3. Rook goes over to a5. Bishop goes down to e2, protecting our only pawn over there on a6. The rook goes down to a2. We got bishop to d3. We got the move f5. King goes to f3. King goes to f6. King goes to e3. We see knight down to e4. Basically offering a trade, like, you want to take my knight. So Magnus Carlsen says, fine, I'll take your knight. So bishop takes e4, pawn takes e4. We got rook up to b5. Rook takes a6. King takes e4. Rook goes to a4. We got king to f3. And you guys can see, I mean, it does maybe look like black has a little something, you know, but, you know, it's even. Everything is fairly even. This rook is going to make sure that, you know, this pawn doesn't promote on a1. We got the move g5. We got g4. We got rook to f4 with check. The king slides over to g3. We see rook to a4. We got f3. Rook goes to a3. We got king to f2. And then we see a repetition of moves. And we have drawn the game by threefold repetition. So chalk this up to another one of the crazy, draws that Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So get into. I feel like they've drawn more than they've really done anything else. I mean, because both players find it really hard to beat each other. And that's what happens when you have players of this caliber. So that is that game. Like I said, it came from round 2. So I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Meterming salamat and tusen tak if you're coming from Norway. And I'll see you guys next time.